The scent of antiseptic and the fluorescent light were Arthur's inescapable routine. For the outside world, he was just another silent elder in a wheelchair. But beneath the surface of his aged skin, something simmered. Fragments of a life he had lived with the fury of a lion, brutally contrasting with the imposed meekness of his present. Why, then, was the quietude of his days as disturbing as the memories that occasionally erupted? Not of pain, but of an almost mythical glory. What lurked in the recesses of Arthur's mind that even the crushing monotony of the nursing home couldn't silence? Can memory be as heavy a burden as unacknowledged honor? Yes, for Arthur, it was both, a double-edged sword of a past that insisted on reappearing in vivid flashes, making his isolation even sharper. He saw, with painful clarity, faces that time and war had taken, hearing battle cries no one else could hear. This incessant return to the past, though often confusing to others, was his only true companion, a constant reminder of who he had been before the world forgot him. And can a monumental act of bravery be completely erased by time and indifference? No, an echo always remains, waiting for the right voice to be amplified and heard again, and Arthur's was a persistent whisper, stubbornly refusing to fade. In room 212, the gray walls were silent witnesses to a faded life. Arthur spent hours gazing out the window, watching leaves fall and the world move on, oblivious to the epic that had once consumed him. His days were filled with perfunctory visits from the nurse, bland meals, and a television playing news channels about a present that no longer seemed to belong to him. He rarely spoke, and when he did, it was in disjointed phrases, seemingly meaningless to those who didn't hold the key to his mind. The fire. He'd murmur one afternoon, eyes fixed on a distant point. Hell on earth. The nurse, accustomed, merely nodded, thinking of senile dementia, unaware she stood before a living witness to unimaginable nightmare and heroism. These fragmented memories were Arthur's only bridge to his true identity, the spark that prevented him from becoming just another number in a registry. They were the last vestiges of a man who had stood up when all others fell, a man who waited, perhaps unconsciously, for someone to one day unravel the tangle of his mind and find the forgotten hero within. Sarah, the nurse, was new to St. Jude's, fresh out of college with ideals still untouched by the exhausting routine of geriatric care. Unlike her more seasoned colleagues, who saw Arthur merely as the patient in room 212, Sarah saw him as an enigma. His disjointed phrases of the fire and hell on earth intrigued her. She noticed the intensity in Arthur's cloudy eyes when he mumbled, a flame that contradicted his general apathy. One afternoon, while tidying his drawers, she found an old Zippo lighter, heavy and cold to the touch, hidden beneath some socks. It wasn't an ordinary lighter. Etched into its silver metal was a bold eagle and the initials AMF. The letters seemed to almost whisper a story, one Arthur's memory refused to fully yield. Who was AMF? And why would such a personal item be forgotten there? Sarah's curiosity was a newly lit ember. She began observing Arthur with a different kind of attention, noticing the moments when his eyes fixed on distant points, as if reliving something intangible. During her night rounds, as he slept, a heavy metal medallion slipped from beneath his pillow. It was a silver star, its ribbon faded and the inscriptions almost illegible with time. Sarah knew what it meant. This was one of the highest combat decorations for bravery. The contrast between the frail man before her and the implication of that medallion was shocking. How could a veteran with such an honorable distinction be here, forgotten, his memories so fragmented? What had he done to earn this? Sarah's mind began to race, connecting the Zippo, the medallion, and Arthur's mysterious words. She felt she was on the verge of uncovering something monumental. The following week, Sarah began her discreet research. In her free time, she scoured online military archives with the few pieces of information she had. Arthur's name and the initials AMF initial searches didn't reveal much, but she persisted. One afternoon, while helping Arthur eat, he, in a rare moment of clarity, pointed to an old news report about the Korean War playing on TV. "That bridge," he whispered, his voice surprisingly steady. "The Bridge of Death." Sarah felt a chill. She had researched the Korean War, but had never delved into the specifics. Arthur's phrase seemed like a beacon, pointing her in a specific direction. Back home, Sarah typed Bridge of Death Korea and Silver Star. The results were overwhelming. Old newspaper articles, battle accounts, and finally, a name that stood out: Arthur M. Fitzgerald. A black and white photo, a young man with a determined gaze and military uniform, almost identical to the Arthur she saw every day, just decades younger. The article detailed an almost suicidal act of courage during the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, where Sergeant Arthur M. Fitzgerald of the 1st Marine Division had single-handedly, under intense enemy fire, demolished a crucial bridge, preventing the advance of enemy forces and saving hundreds of his surrounded comrades' lives. The article mentioned a Zippo lighter with engraved initials, a gift from his best friend, which he carried at the time. Sarah's blood ran cold. The pieces fit together with terrifying precision. The lighter, the initials, the silver star, Arthur's phrases about fire and the bridge. It was all real. The revelation hit her like lightning. The silent man in room 212 wasn't just a patient. He was a war hero, a Marine who had performed a feat of bravery that changed the course of an entire battle. Why was his story so forgotten? Why did no one here know? The weight of that discovery was immense. Sarah felt a mix of admiration, sadness, and fierce determination. She couldn't allow Arthur M. Fitzgerald's act to remain a secret, buried in an old man's fragmented memory and dusty pages of history. The truth needed to come out. But how would she tell the world the story of a hero who didn't even fully remember his own heroism? What would she do now with such a powerful truth? And more importantly, how would Arthur react to rediscovering his own glorious past? With the silver star and Zippo lighter in hand, and the name Arthur M. Fitzgerald echoing in her mind, Sarah knew there was a monumental story to unearth. The next night, she delved into military records, old newspaper articles, and any mention of the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. She needed to reconstruct Arthur's past, piece by piece, to understand the depth of the heroism of that man so silent in the present. What she discovered painted a picture so vivid and terrifying that it made her hold her breath, imagining the horror and courage Arthur must have felt. It was the winter of 1950, one of the most brutal in Korea's history. American troops, caught off guard by a massive offensive of hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers who had crossed the border, were surrounded and outnumbered near the Chosin Reservoir. Temperatures plummeted to 30–40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, freezing equipment, food, and cruelly, the bodies of men. The retreat turned into a desperate fight for survival, a glacial march of 75 miles through snow-covered mountains, with the enemy attacking relentlessly from all sides. With every step, death lurked, whether from frostbite, starvation, or enemy fire. It was in this white hell that Arthur M. Fitzgerald, a young Marine sergeant, stood out. The 1st Marine Division, to which Arthur belonged, was trapped in one of the mountain gorges, with a single escape route, a vital bridge over an icy abyss, known to the soldiers as the Bridge of Death. The Chinese, aware of its strategic importance, had concentrated their attacks there, intending to cut off the only retreat path for thousands of Marines and infantry soldiers following behind. The situation was desperate. American forces were exhausted, low on ammunition, and countless men were wounded. The bridge was under constant fire from Chinese machine guns positioned on the surrounding hills. With every attempt to advance, more men fell. Arthur's unit commander gave the order. The bridge needed to be demolished to prevent waves of Chinese soldiers from using it to flank and annihilate the American troops. But how? Who would have the courage to expose themselves to an inferno of bullets and ice to accomplish such a mission? Arthur volunteered. Without hesitation, he crawled under the heaviest fire, carrying the explosives that would be the salvation or condemnation of his comrades. Sarah could almost feel the biting cold, the smell of gunpowder, and the dread that must have hung in the air. Arthur, with his friend's Zippo lighter in one pocket and determination etched on his face, advanced. Machine guns spat fire. Bullets whizzed around him, tearing through the snow and rock. He could smell death, but he kept going, every muscle in his body screaming with effort and fear. Amidst the chaos, he reached the base of the structure, his frozen fingers struggling to arm the detonators. An enemy projectile hit the ground nearby, throwing him backward, but he got up, adrenaline coursing through his veins, and pulled the detonator pin. The flash of the explosion lit up the valley for an instant, the roar reverberating through the icy mountains. The bridge broke apart, its sections collapsing into the abyss with a metallic groan. taking with them the Chinese hope of a quick and overwhelming victory. Arthur, miraculously, managed to crawl back to relative safety. Wounded, exhausted, but alive. Arthur's sacrifice didn't completely halt the retreat, but it gained crucial time for the Allied forces to regroup and establish a new route. He didn't just demolish the bridge. He demolished the enemy's strategy at that vital point, allowing thousands of lives to be saved. His action, which earned him the Silver Star, was a turning point in that section of the battle, a flash of heroism amidst despair. Why, then, was this man's story relegated to oblivion? How did society allow an act of such magnitude to dissolve into the mist of time? Sarah's mind was full of questions, and the next was the most urgent. How would she bring this story back into the light, and what would it mean for Arthur himself? The weight of history was now on her shoulders. The wave of attention surrounding Arthur brought with it a mix of hope and apprehension for Sarah. The St. Jude staff did their best to shield Arthur from the more intrusive press, but allowed controlled visits from veterans and family members who came to pay their respects. Arthur's niece, Susan, now a constant presence, brought old photo albums and family belongings Arthur had long forgotten. Together, Sarah and Susan tried, with gentleness, to rekindle the flames of Arthur's memory. One afternoon, as Susan showed a faded photo of a young man with the same Zippo lighter, Arthur, in a flash of lucidity that made Sarah's heart pound, said, "Billy. He gave me that. Before the bridge." Billy was the friend whose memory Arthur had unconsciously carried for decades. The nurse and niece exchanged a look of triumph mixed with tears. It was the breakthrough they had so desperately hoped for. The story of Billy and other comrades began to emerge in fragments. Small portals to the heroic past Arthur had kept locked away. The biggest challenge, however, was how to present this reality to Arthur himself. His fragmented memory was a barrier. Sarah feared a full revelation might confuse or even disturb him. They decided to start slowly. Sarah spent more time with him, showing him old photos she had found. She pointed to the young soldier in the image, saying, "This is you, Arthur. A very brave man." At first, Arthur showed no reaction, his eyes empty. But one afternoon, as Sarah described the freezing cold of Chosin and the sacrifice at the bridge, Arthur mumbled, "The gloves, lost in the snow." It was a small detail, but an indication that something was breaking through the fog. With each small memory he exhibited, Sarah's hope grew. Arthur's story, however, couldn't remain confined within the asylum walls. Sarah, with Dr. Reed's hesitant blessing, contacted a local newspaper. The impact was immediate. The front-page headline, "Forgotten Korean War Hero Discovered in Local Nursing Home," captured the attention of the entire city. Within days, Arthur Fitzgerald's story became a national phenomenon. Reporters from major television networks and prestigious newspapers began arriving at St. Jude's, transforming the quiet nursing home into a hub of media attention. Veterans from across the country, especially those who fought in Korea, began calling and sending letters. Many expressed outrage that a hero like Arthur had been forgotten, but also deep gratitude that his story was finally being told. Arthur's estranged niece was the first family member to appear, visibly moved and ashamed for not having known her uncle's true stature. She apologized, tears streaming down her face, and promised she would never leave him alone again. Still, the core of the emotional conflict was Arthur himself. He, the epicenter of all this commotion, remained mostly oblivious. How do you honor a man who can't fully remember his own deeds? The nursing home staff, now united in a common purpose, began creating a memory wall in the main corridor, with photos of young Arthur, copies of articles, and a replica of his Silver Star. Community members sent letters, drawings, and small gifts, expressing their gratitude. Room 212, once a sanctuary for oblivion, now bustled with the attention and affection Arthur had never imagined. But beneath all the euphoria and public recognition, a crucial question loomed. Would this sudden avalanche of memory and fame be a burden or a blessing for Arthur? He was experiencing flashes of his heroic past, but Sarah's face twisted with a pang of anxiety. Would this rush of memories be too much for his fragile mind? Or would it be the catalyst that finally freed the hero trapped within him, bringing him peace in his final days? The truth is, the revelation had a powerful impact on everyone, but the ultimate fate of this recognition was still uncertain for Arthur himself. And what if his memory were fully restored? Would it be a liberation or a painful rediscovery of long-suppressed losses and horrors? The wave of attention surrounding Arthur brought with it a mix of hope and apprehension for Sarah. The St. Jude staff did their best to shield Arthur from the more intrusive press, but allowed controlled visits from veterans and family members who came to pay their respects. Arthur's niece, Susan, now a constant presence, brought old photo albums and family belongings Arthur had long forgotten. Together, Sarah and Susan tried, with delicacy, to rekindle the flames of Arthur's memory. One afternoon, while Susan showed a faded photo of a young man with the same Zippo lighter, Arthur, in a flash of lucidity that made Sarah's heart pound, said, "Billy. He gave me that. Before the bridge." Billy was the friend whose memory Arthur had carried unconsciously for decades. The nurse and niece exchanged a look of triumph mixed with tears. It was the breakthrough they had so desperately hoped for. The story of Billy and other comrades began to emerge in fragments. Small portals to the heroic past Arthur had locked away. The major turning point occurred when the national television report aired an interview with Arthur. Although his answers were few and far between, the mere presence of the frail man, whose eyes still bore the scars of a brutal time, touched the hearts of millions. The country found itself before a hero who didn't ask for recognition but deserved every ounce of it. Donations to St. Jude soared, many of them aimed at improving the quality of life for Arthur and other veterans in the nursing home. More importantly, however, was the retrieval of his dignity. The National Park Service, in recognition of Arthur's heroic act, announced plans to install a commemorative plaque at the Bridge of Death in South Korea, honoring Sergeant Arthur M. Fitzgerald. The widely publicized news brought a wave of emotion. For the first time in decades, Arthur's name would be immortalized at the site of his greatest bravery. The culmination of recognition came with a special ceremony at St. Jude's itself. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, in conjunction with the Marine Corps, organized an event to reaffirm Arthur's Silver Star and, to everyone's surprise, present him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States, granted for an especially meritorious contribution to the security or national interests of the United States, world peace, cultural or other significant public or private endeavors. The nursing home hall was packed. War veterans in their uniforms, high-ranking officials, local politicians, Arthur's family, now more present than ever. The press, and even some of Arthur's fellow residents from the nursing home were there. Sarah, standing beside Arthur in his wheelchair, felt her heart tighten with a mix of pride and humility. When the officer read the citation for the Medal of Freedom, detailing Arthur's act of bravery at the Bridge of Death, the old Marine's eyes, once so distant, shone with a new intensity. Then it happened. An almost sacred silence fell over the room. Arthur, his voice hoarse but clear, said, "The boys, they were counting on me. Couldn't let the fire get me." He wasn't reciting a memory. He was reliving it, connecting with the essence of his courage. Tears rolled down many faces present. It was memory restored, or at least, the essence of it, coming to the surface in his moment of greatest glory. In the following months, Arthur's life at St. Jude's changed dramatically. His room became a small sanctuary, filled with thank you letters, photos of veterans who visited him, and even a folded American flag presented by a group of young scouts. Sarah and Susan's visits became precious moments, where he shared more fragments of his military life, now with increasing fluidity. He never fully recovered all his memories, but the lapses were less frequent, and the moments of clarity, deeper. He started smiling more, a genuine smile that had long been forgotten. Arthur Fitzgerald's legacy was not just a story of individual bravery. He became a symbol of the silent sacrifice of so many veterans who, after serving, fell into oblivion. His story inspired national initiatives to locate and honor other forgotten heroes, ensuring that service and sacrifice were not in vain. Sarah, who started it all with her simple curiosity, was recognized for her role in the discovery. But her greatest reward was seeing the peace on Arthur's face, the man she had rescued by being rescued by her. The story of Arthur M. Fitzgerald, the veteran from Room 212, became a powerful testament that heroism, no matter how much time and indifference try to erase it, never truly dies. It simply waits in silence for the right moment to be rediscovered and reaffirmed.